My name is Jenna Whitaker. I am 35 years old. One ordinary afternoon last summer, my sister had casually told our parents and her then boyfriend that my online business was basically a hobby and that I was barely scraping by, painting me as the unreliable one who could never contribute to family things. That lie spread like wildfire, making me the pity project at every gathering. Now, months later, we were crammed into Eric Vaughn's law office in Grand Rapids for the big wedding budget meeting, and my sister was at it again, her voice dripping with that familiar contempt as she turned to the Langley family and said I couldn't be counted on for anything substantial. My stomach twisted, but I sat there silent, knowing the truth about my 5 thriving coffee shops could change everything, or I could finally choose to walk away and protect my peace. If you have ever been the one your own sister looks down on, no matter what, tell me in the comments what that felt like for you. I read every single one. The conference room smelled faintly of fresh coffee and expensive leather. Eric sat at the head of the long table, shuffling papers, while my sister leaned forward in her chair, eyes locked on me like I was the only obstacle left in her perfect plan. My sister's fiancé, Derek Langley, shifted uncomfortably beside her. His mother, Veronica Langley, and father Alan Langley sat across from us, looking every bit the polished suburban couple who expected everything to run smoothly. My sister's future brother-in-law, Justin Langley, scrolled on his phone, pretending not to listen, but I caught the smirk he tried to hide. My sister cleared her throat and jumped straight in. Look, we all know the wedding is going to cost $75,000 at minimum, and some of us have actual careers that let us pull our weight. Jenna here has been doing that little internet thing for years now, and it is cute, but let us be honest, it is not exactly paying the bills. So the least she can do is step up and cover the catering or maybe the flowers since the rest of us are already stretched thin. Her words landed like a slap. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I kept my face neutral. Kayla Morrison, my best friend and business partner, had come with me as moral support, and I saw her jaw tighten across the table. She knew the truth. She knew every detail of how I had quietly built my 5 coffee shops from that little internet thing into a solid operation that cleared 6 figures last year alone. But I had never corrected my sister. Not once. I had let her believe I was still struggling because it was easier than dealing with the jealousy that always followed any mention of my success. My sister kept going, her voice sweet, but laced with that familiar edge. I mean, it is not like you have a real job or a husband or anything tying you down. You could at least try to be useful for once in your life, instead of making the rest of us carry the load. Veronica Langley nodded slowly, as if my sister's assessment made perfect sense. Well, dear, that does seem fair. Family helps family after all. Alan Langley murmured something about responsibility, while Justin let out a low chuckle that he tried to turn into a cough. I glanced at Eric. He raised an eyebrow the way he always did when he knew I was holding back. He had drawn up the paperwork for my businesses years ago. He knew exactly how much I could write a check for, without blinking. But this was not about the money. This was the same pattern that had played out my whole adult life. My sister deciding who I was, and everyone else nodding along. Kayla caught my eye and gave a tiny shake of her head. She had warned me before we walked in that my sister would push. She always pushed. My sister turned her gaze back to me. So what do you say, Jenna? Can you at least manage $25,000 toward the catering? Or is that too much for your little side hustle? The room went quiet. I felt the weight of every eye on me. This was the moment. I could tell them. I could pull out my phone, show the financial statements Eric had ready, and watch my sister's face crumble. But something in me had finally snapped. The years of being erased, the constant jabs, the way she always made sure I stayed in the background while she shone. I was tired. Before I could speak, my sister added one more line, her voice dropping to that fake concerned tone she used when she wanted to twist the knife. I just do not want you to feel left out. But let us be real. You have never really been the successful one in the family. This is your chance to change that. A sharp pain twisted in my chest. Kayla's hand brushed mine under the table in silent support. Eric leaned forward, ready to step in if I gave the signal. But I did not. Not yet. I took a slow breath and looked my sister straight in the eye. You really think that is all I am capable of? She laughed, that light dismissive laugh I had heard 1,000 times. Oh, come on, do not get defensive. We all know the score. That was when my phone buzzed on the table. A text from Rachel Quinn, my sister's closest friend, who had somehow found her way into the meeting. The message was short and vicious. Claire says Jenna is going to be the cheap one again. Make sure she feels it. I stared at the screen. My sister had been texting Rachel the whole time, feeding her the narrative. The gossip was already starting. Kayla whispered, "Do not let her do this again." But I was already deciding. This time, I would not play the game. This time, I would set the boundary that had been building for years. My sister leaned in closer, her perfume thick in the air. Well, $25,000. That is not asking much, is it? The tension in the room thickened like smoke. Veronica and Alan exchanged a look. Justin finally put his phone down, watching with open curiosity. Eric waited for my cue. I felt the old familiar pull, the guilt, the need to prove I was good enough. But underneath it, something new and steady had taken root. I was done proving anything. I opened my mouth to answer, and the words that came out surprised even me. "No," I said, keeping my tone even. "I am not contributing $25,000 or any amount to this wedding. Not the catering, not the flowers, not 1 cent." The conference room went completely still. My sister stared at me like I had just slapped her across the face. Then her expression twisted into that familiar mix of disbelief and pure contempt she reserved only for me. "You have got to be kidding me right now." She snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "After everything our family has done for you over the years, you're really going to sit here and refuse to help your own sister on the most important day of her life. Typical Jenna. Always the one who finds a way to make it about you and your little hang-ups." My mother let out a soft gasp and leaned forward in her chair. "Jenna, honey, your sister is right. This is not the time to be difficult. We all want this wedding to be perfect, and family is supposed to pull together." My father stayed quiet, but his eyes flicked between us, clearly uncomfortable. He never liked stepping into these moments. My sister did not miss a beat. She leaned across the table, her eyes locked on mine. "You have never been the reliable one, Jenna. That is why I told everyone your business was basically a hobby. Because it is. 5 coffee shops that you play around with, while the rest of us have real careers and real responsibilities. You are 35 years old and still acting like some struggling artist who cannot commit to anything. Derek and I have put our hearts into this, and you cannot even manage $25,000. It's embarrassing." Veronica Langley nodded slowly, as if my sister's words were gospel. "It does seem a bit selfish, dear, especially when the total budget is pushing $85,000 now, with all the extras your sister wanted." Alan Langley murmured something about family duty while Justin smirked again, clearly enjoying the show. Kayla Morrison squeezed my hand harder under the table. She had been my rock through every one of these family meetings, and she knew the real numbers behind my 5 coffee shops. But I had asked her to stay quiet for now. This was not about proving anything anymore. This was about finally drawing the line. Eric Vaughn cleared his throat and glanced at me. He knew the full picture, too. The paperwork for my businesses sat in his files, and he had seen me build everything from the ground up. But he respected my choice to keep it private. My sister kept going, her voice rising with every word. I mean, come on, Jenna. You show up looking like you just rolled out of bed every time something important happens. And now you cannot even pretend to care about my future. I have always been the one carrying the family name, while you hide behind your little online thing and your single life. If you cannot step up and be useful for once, maybe you should not even be part of this wedding at all. The words landed hard. I felt that familiar sting in my chest, the one that used to make me cave immediately. But this time, something different settled in its place. A quiet, steady resolve. I was done being erased. Done being the family punchline. Rachel Quinn, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly looked up from her phone. My sister just texted me that Jenna is pulling her usual stunt again, she said casually, as if it was normal conversation. She says, if you do not help, she might have to rethink who stands up with her. My sister shot Rachel a quick look, but did not correct her. Instead, she turned back to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. See, even Rachel knows how this goes. You have always been jealous of me, Jenna. Jealous that I actually have a life people admire. So, now you want to ruin this for me by making it all about your feelings again. My mother nodded along. Your sister has worked so hard for this, Jenna. The least you could do is show some support instead of making everything a battle. I felt the pressure building like a weight on my chest, the same pattern every single time. My sister starting the attack and everyone else falling in line. But this time, I refused to play along. I am not trying to ruin anything, I said, keeping my voice calm. I am simply saying I am not paying for any part of this. If that changes how you feel about me being involved, then I understand. My sister laughed, but it sounded bitter. Of course it changes things. You have always been the difficult one, the one who makes family events awkward. Remember last Christmas when you barely showed up? This is the same thing. You cannot even be happy for me without turning it into some drama about how hard your life is. Sarah Klein, the wedding planner who had slipped into the room halfway through the meeting, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had been taking notes the whole time, and now she cleared her throat. Maybe we can table the budget discussion for a moment and focus on the timeline instead. But my sister waved her off. No, Sarah, this needs to be addressed right now. Jenna, if you cannot find it in you to contribute like a real family member, then maybe you should just step back completely. I do not want any negativity on my day. The room felt smaller. Kayla whispered, You do not have to take this, Jenna. But I held up a hand. I was not taking it anymore. Not the way I used to. I stood up slowly, gathering my bag. Then I guess I will step back. I wish you the best with the wedding, but I am done being the one who's never enough. My sister's face flushed. You are really walking out just like that, after I bent over backwards to even include you in the first place. My mother reached for my arm. Jenna, do not do this. Your sister needs you. But I gently pulled away. I need to do this for me. As I headed for the door, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A group text from my sister had already gone out to half the family. Jenna just refused to help with anything and is making this all about her again. Guess some people never change. The message hit my screen right as I stepped into the hallway. My stomach twisted, but I kept walking. This was the boundary I had needed for years. No more proving myself. No more letting her define who I was. 2 days later, the pressure really started. My sister called me at 6 in the morning, her voice already edged with that same cold sarcasm. Mom and Dad are devastated, Jenna. They cannot believe you would do this to me. After all the times they helped you with rent when your little coffee shops were struggling, you cannot even pitch in for my wedding. It is not like you have actual bills or anything. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. Kayla had stayed over the night before, and she mouthed, "Do not engage," from across the room. But my sister kept going. "Derek's parents are asking questions now. They think you are holding some kind of grudge. Justin even joked that maybe you're jealous because I am finally getting the life you never could. If you do not fix this soon, the whole family is going to start wondering why you are so selfish." The words cut deep, but I kept my voice steady. I am not selfish for saying no. I am protecting my own peace. She laughed that sharp laugh again. "Peace, please. You are just punishing me because I called out your hobby business for what it is. Everyone is talking about it, Jenna. The cousins, the aunts, even Rachel is saying she always knew you would flake when it mattered. If you do not apologize and offer to cover at least the photography, the invitations are going out next week without your name on them." I felt my chest tighten. The isolation was already creeping in. My mother texted me later that afternoon, begging me to reconsider. "Your sister is crying every night, Jenna. She says you have never supported her dreams. Please do not make this worse for all of us." My father sent a single message that same evening. "Think about the family, Jenna. This is bigger than one event." I did not reply to any of them. Instead, I threw myself into my coffee shops. Kayla and I spent the next week finalizing the lease on our 6th location and meeting with Eric to review quarterly numbers that showed steady growth. The success I had built quietly over the years felt like the only solid thing left in my life. But every time my phone lit up with another family notification, the doubt crept back in. 3 weeks passed, and the escalation turned sharper. My sister posted a vague story on social media about certain family members who only show up when it benefits them and tagged half our relatives. Comments poured in, some defending her, some asking what happened. Rachel replied, publicly, "Some people never grow up, unfortunately." My mother called me that night, her voice trembling. "Jenna, people are starting to ask why you're not in the wedding party. Your sister is devastated. She says if you cannot even pretend to care, then maybe it is better if you do not come at all." The ultimatum hung in the air. I could feel the family pulling away one by one. Justin sent me a direct message, telling me I was making everyone uncomfortable. Veronica Langley left a voicemail about how disappointed she was that I would not support the union of two families. Even Sarah, the wedding planner, emailed me asking if I wanted to be removed from the guest list to avoid any awkwardness. I sat in my apartment one evening, staring at the stack of unread messages. Kayla sat beside me. "You do not owe them this, Jenna. You set the boundary. Now you have to live with what comes next." I knew she was right. But living with it meant watching the group chat fill with photos of dress fittings and cake tastings without me. It meant my mother sending me passive updates about how happy my sister looked now that the negativity was gone. It meant my father stopping by my shop once just to say he hoped I would reconsider for the sake of peace, and then leaving without hugging me. The wedding day came and went. I did not attend. I spent it at one of my coffee shops, helping with the morning rush, and then driving out to the new location to check on construction. Kayla stayed with me the whole time, But even she had to leave eventually for her own family obligations. That night, the silence in my apartment felt heavier than ever. No calls, no texts asking where I was, just a single message from my sister the next morning. Glad you stayed away. Everyone had a better time without the drama. I read it once, then blocked the number. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. The boundary I had set had become a wall, and I was the only one on my side of it. Months later, I ran into my mother at the grocery store. She looked at me with tired eyes and said my sister had asked her not to mention the wedding around me anymore. She says it is easier this way, Jenna, for all of us. My father had apparently agreed. The family gatherings continued without me. Birthdays, holidays, even a new baby announcement from one of the cousins came through distant mutual friends. I heard about them secondhand, if at all. Eric called me one afternoon to check in. He told me my businesses were thriving and that if I ever wanted to talk about the family situation, he was there. But even his kindness felt distant. Kayla remained my closest support, but she had her own life and her own family. I threw myself into work, expanding the 6th shop and planning the 7th. The success was real and it was mine. Yet every quiet evening alone reminded me of the cost. I had chosen myself. I had refused to be the reliable backup, the one who fixed everything with money or presents. But in doing so, I had become the outsider, the sister who was no longer invited, the daughter who was easier to forget. My sister never reached out again. Neither did my parents after that grocery store encounter. The isolation settled in like a permanent quiet. I learned to live with it the way you learn to live with an old injury that aches when the weather changes. It wasn't victory. It was not revenge. It was simply the price of finally protecting the life I had built. I still wonder sometimes if they ever realized how much they lost by demanding I prove my worth every single time. But I do not ask anymore. I just keep moving forward alone. Thank you for listening to my story. It still feels strange to say it out loud, but setting that boundary was the hardest and most necessary thing I have ever done. If you have ever walked away from family pressure and ended up feeling more alone than before, what helped you keep going? I read every comment, and your stories remind me I am not the only one.